Morning.
Hello.
Shall I start or should we wait another few minutes?
Yeah, good morning. I think it's 9 o'clock, so we can start if you are ready. I don't know, maybe a short introduction to agenda, and then we can start with the program.
I will make a short introduction into agenda. So good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all here again. So today we have in our agenda, first we talk about planted forest and again about the example of one forest association in Western Estonia. And then the next presentation will be about thinnings. After that, we talk about mini harvesters and drones in forestry. And the last one will be about who is average Estonian forest owner and forest manager. Okay, Arlar, maybe you can start.
Yes, 1 second. Okay, so welcome to Estonia again. I will now talk about how we plant our forests and what we plant in our forests. So how to get new forests growing. So first of all, afforestation, meaning we plant the trees on areas where there was a field or something other than forest before. Afforestation was done on a large scale in the period after the Second World War, during the Soviet occupation. Because during the Second World War and after that, there were many sad events in Estonian history, and a lot of farmlands were left empty. So in some places, new trees started to grow by themselves. And in some places, the old farms and fields were planted. Mainly pine and spruce were planted there. Nowadays, we can't do much more afforestation because forests already cover 53% of our land. For example, agricultural lands are 28%, and the remaining are cities, roads, houses, etc. So we can't do it much more now. However, there is little bit potential on some areas that used to be agricultural land but are left unused, or some places inside the forests where just for some reason the forest isn't growing naturally. These areas cover about 1.5% of Estonia, and I think some of these areas could be forested in the future. But most of our planting is done by reforestation. The Estonian legislation says that the owner must use some reforestation methods within 2 years after harvesting, if the area is larger than 0.5 hectares. These methods can be one of those in the list or a combination of these methods in the list. And I think it's important to notice that this last line, other methods that favor the natural regeneration, it is often used that just trees for the seeds are left and maybe some soil scarification is done. And in Estonia, actually quite often, this is also a good solution to get the new forest growing. So here is a picture about pine stand where clear cutting has been made. And the owner has left some trees for the seeds. They have also done soil scarification. And actually this owner has done planting also. So it's a very good method to certainly get the new pine stand growing. Because you can see that in the picture, 1 second, there is also birch trees growing. And if the owner would not plant any trees, just hope for the seeds to come, then there would be high risk that this pine forest would become birch forest in the future. Whatever methods the forest owner uses, the new forest must be growing within 5 years after harvesting. Now, what is a new forest? It's actually quite simple. Depending on the tree species, there has to be a certain number of trees that are usually 0.5 meters high. So that can be considered as a new forest that is growing, and it's not very likely that this forest won't start growing, that there is some risk that happens. What we use for plants and seeds and how we collect them. The State Forest Management Center is responsible for maintaining enough seeds for Estonian forest sector. They collect the seeds from some forest stands that have very good quality, but also from not nurseries, but places where they have collected seeds from the plus trees and planted them, and they collect the seeds from the yeah, I can't say it in English, from the tree selection program. The State Forest Management Center can sell the seeds, and they can be used for planting in private forests and in the nurseries, and they use the same seeds for planting in their own nurseries. The tree selection program began in 1959. Of course, before that, a few hundred years, there has always been knowledge to collect seeds from the best trees and from best stands. However, the first seeds were collected and planted in 1959. In 1964, there were about 1,100 tree nurseries in Estonia. Most of them were quite small. The average size were 2,500 square meters. But they actually produced very many trees, and in 1967, the maximum number of 76 million trees were produced. However, again, when the Soviet Union collapsed, the forest management organizations that worked under Soviet Union, they ceased to exist. In 1993, we had only 12 million trees that were produced in local nurseries. Nowadays, this number has grown again, and now we have 36 million trees produced in Estonia in 2020. I do think that we need a little bit more trees because we are importing a little bit, and this number will probably even out when it reaches about 40 to 50 million per year. In 2020, we produced mainly 3 tree species, birch, spruce, and pine. Also a little bit of black alder, Alnus glutinosa. And all of the other tree species, they were produced in very low numbers, a few hundred or a few thousand every year. And while pine is mostly container plants, spruce and birch are still mainly open root plants. Now, this is one of the smaller tree nursery. Often these smaller nurseries have some problems. They can't get the financing for expanding, and they actually don't have sometimes good expertise how this work should be done. And over here you can see that there is some moss growing between the trees, and the owner said that yes, he has a problem with that, but he does not know what to do with this. So hopefully, with maybe some subsidies in the future, we can improve this, and it will get better. So planting is, when we have the trees from the nurseries, then the planting is usually done on scarified soil. Most of the planting takes place in April and May, and about 10% is planted in the autumn also. There are some risks with new plants. For example, the pine weevil can damage young spruce and pine plants, and so sometimes they are these plants are waxed, or the owners buy waxed plants to get the protection from this beetle. There is also risk of drought that has affected some planted forests in recent years. So yeah, maybe this picture should have been before the previous slide, but yeah, this is the soil scarification. So that when the planters come, they can plant inside the soil. They don't need to cut open the grass, and even if you sow, put the seeds on the ground, you sow them, then you can just put them also on the soil. Now, if we have young plants growing, we can often have this problem that there are other plants next to these plants. Here you can see a small spruce that you can hardly find. And actually, even in this place, I took this picture 1 week ago. There was this problem that this was basically the only spruce plant I could find. Most of the other spruce plants were also already underneath the grass layer. The problem is that if the snow comes, the snow falls on the branches of the other plants, and it might press the spruce down, and it might kill it. So how we can cut the grass around this tree? We basically just have to wait. We can't do it in the moment. We have to wait about 1 month. This picture is taken in 22nd of October in 2020. There is much less vegetation that you can see. All the leaves have fallen down, and it's much easier to find spruce or pine plants in the forest, and then you can cut around these plants free. So this concludes the first part of the presentation. Now we will have Uku Merilo from local forest owner association, who's going to talk about in the video how the local association deals with the planting. But if you have any questions right now, I can answer them. Thank you.
Yes, I have a question. Eric from Sweden.
Yes, hi.
Yeah. Is the forest owner free to choose which species he wants or she wants to plant, or if he wants to mix some species or whatever?
Yes, there is a list that says what species can be planted in what soil types. Usually birch is allowed almost everywhere. Spruce and pine is also allowed in most of the places. However, you can't plant, for example, spruce in an area where it's not allowed in some very dry soils, for example. Also, there is a list of 3 species that can be used in Estonia for planting. For example, some large types can be used in Estonia, but they are not considered when the new forest is measured. So if you plant 1,000 large trees per hectare, you would still actually need to plant another 1,000 spruce trees, because this large is not considered as a viable solution for the new forest. So sometimes you just plant maybe 10 large trees if you are interested, but most of the planting is done with mainly 3 species.
Okay. In Sweden, we have a increasing discussing about mixing to reduce the risk for future failures and so on. We talk more and more about mixing species in the stand. What is the discussion in Estonia about mixing species?
Yes. In the Soviet times, in 60s, 70s, we planted 3,000 spruce per hectare. Nowadays, we are planting 1,500. Even if we plant spruce, and I think there is a video soon that covers this topic, but even if we plant, let's say, 1,500 spruce trees, we have anyways birch trees growing and maybe some other trees also. So in order to get a mixed forest in the future, we should still plant the spruce or pine, but we just grow it out as a mixed forest. We don't cut down all the birch trees. And yes, this is a risk that, well, we don't know exactly what the future will bring. We only know that we don't know anything exactly. And forest owners, I think there is a tendency that we don't want to plant so many only spruce or pine stands anymore. But yeah, there are also these discussions that mixed forests are more safe for the forest owners and for the ecosystem also.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Joseph, perhaps?
I have also a similar question. So can a forest owner go and import seedlings from other countries without knowing where the seedlings are coming? And also, can he plant alien species, so we call it, so not natural native species?
Yes. Importing plants is strictly regulated. The plants that we are currently importing to Estonia, they are actually grown from the seeds that came from Estonia. For example, we have imported some plants from German nurseries, but these nurseries used Estonian seed before. So this is considered a risk-free solution. However, there is always the risk that maybe some disease comes from the nursery, from some other trees that we import to Estonia. But otherwise, no, the forest owner cannot import trees to Estonia without or they cannot freely import trees to Estonia. About alien species, yes, there is a list of alien species that can be planted in Estonian forests. For example, some large trees, fir trees that don't grow here naturally, but they are not considered as a new forest. If the owner wants to plant only fir trees, the environmental board says that you can have fir trees in your forest, but you still need to have spruce or pine or birch stand actually to be considered as a new forest growing. I hope this answers to your question.
Yes, thank you. And just another one, maybe I missed this information. Does forest owner have to buy these seedlings, or he can get them? Because here in Slovenia, forest owners can get for free the seedlings if they want to plant their forest.
Yes, they have to buy the seedlings.
Mm-hmm.
There are some subsidies that cover about 50% of the buying cost, but still it is a cost for the forest owner and they have to buy it.
So the money comes from rural development program, or do you have national funds? How is this subsidized?
This comes from the national funds. And yeah, it's done well. Basically, I think if you say that in your country the owners can get it for free, I would say that yeah, it's not the same type of subsidy, but basically it's a similar subsidy that in one case I guess the state buys the plants, and in our case the state just subsidizes buying the plants. So maybe it's similar.
Yeah. because we are using rural development funds for this planting.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I think
Do you make mostly pure stems or mixed stems?
can you please repeat the question? I didn't hear the first part.
Do you make mostly pure stems or mixed stems?
If I understand the context of the question, then we usually plant one tree species, and then as other tree species naturally grow in the forest, it's up to the forest owner if they want to cut down other tree species or leave some of them growing. Was this that you meant?
Yeah, yes. Well, if there is, if nowadays maybe there is a tendency to produce more mixed stems or not?
The tendency is we are going to have more mixed stands, but actually we come from the starting point is where we said that we have to have one species stands, and we are still very close to the starting point. I think maybe in 10 years we have much more mixed stands that are planted and grown.
Thank you.
I can't see any more questions. If there are, please go ahead, but maybe Livia can start the videos.
Aller, can you please turn your share screening off there?
Yes. Of course.
I will try now.
I think I stopped it, but I'm not quite sure.
Yes, I think I can turn it on right now. Please let me know if it doesn't work.
Okay, yeah, now we can. Now we can see the
So
presentation.
this is one of the estates of our members. In 2014, there was a final felling here. It was mostly spruce forest, and in 2015, containerized spruces were planted here. And as you can see, maybe from the distance, there are some spruces visible, and there are also some pines that have started growing here naturally, and also the birches, which are pioneer tree species, so they come in quite quickly. In 2015 was the first planting of the spruces, and in 2017 a bit more spruces were added, because some of those containerized spruces were dried and died. So right now what is going on is there's a pre-commercial thinning. We take away some of the hazelnut bushes, gray alder bushes, also aspen, and to get more light for the birches and spruces and the pines here that are growing. In the distance you can see some of the trees are standing, like this birch back there. These are the seed trees to enhance natural regeneration, and as you can see, it has worked quite well here. Also, those knobs of trees there are so-called biodiversity trees. They take the life of one generation of forest to another generation. So these trees are good for insects to live in, for birds to do their nests, and for food. So right now, the owner wants this estate to have all the so-called less valuable broadleaf species removed. So only the birches and oaks and the cultivated spruces and also the pines will stay, and the other bushes and trees will be harvested by a worker. So right now, half of the estate is done. It is, I believe, a bit bigger than 4 hectares. I think 3 hectares now has been completed, and once the whole estate is been thinned, we come back here and we will replant some of the areas that are more empty, and we will plant open-rooted spruce seedlings. In this state here, in 2014, containerized spruces were planted, and today there are a lot of birches also growing around the spruces, and also naturally regenerated pines. So what we tend to do here is not to take down all the broadleaf trees and only grow conifers. We try to, in the future sense, we try to make this area here like future-proof. So a lot of scientists are saying that the conifers in this area could be struck by different risks in the future. By letting these birches here and oaks to grow, we reduce this risk of a bigger damage being done in this compartment in the future. So right now there are birches around 2 meters tall here, and spruces about knee height. And we also plan to plant quite a few more spruces here just to fill in the gaps on the state, and so after that, I think this picture here is quite good, and we can wait for what's gonna happen in 10, 20 years and see if this kind of species composition here is a good way to go for future generations as well. So now we are on a really big estate where we planted some containerized spruces. It was in the springtime, and as you can see now, there's quite a bit of different woody vegetation growing on this estate, and the containerized spruces that we put down are like maybe 10 centimeters, 20 centimeters high. So to get them to help them out from this natural regeneration, we have to come here in a few weeks and clean the rows that the spruces were planted, clean the rows on both sides. So the woody vegetation that is growing around the spruces won't suffocate the spruces in the wintertime when snow comes and pushes all this vegetation on top of the spruces. To say a few words about the different plants that we cultivate, we usually get the most orders for containerized spruces, Then open root spruces. In springtime, very popular is to plant containerized pines, and also some members order alders, black alders, and a lot of containerized birches as well. So these are all the different plants that we put in the ground. A few words about the planting process. For open root plants, we have those special kind of small shovels that we use to make a small hole in the ground, and then we put the root. The whole root needs to be inside the soil for the plant to start growing well. For these containerized plants, we have those special planting, so to say, pipes that on the one hand you put the containerized plant inside there, and on the other end there is an opening mechanism that opens beneath the soil, so it will create a small opening for the containerized plant to start growing there. The origin of the plants that we put in the ground is quite different. Many of the plants we get from local growers. Many of those plants come from big nurseries across Estonia, and sometimes when the order of or the need for the plants is really big, then the plants come from Germany, from Lithuania, outside of Estonia. But still, the plants are grown from the seeds that originate from Estonia. Yeah, essentially there are two planting seasons, so to say. One is in the springtime, as quickly when the snow has been melted, then the soil preparation will start, and after that the planting. In autumn time, it's more risk-free to plant during September and maybe the first part of October, because when the first really cold weathers come, they might have the effect that the freezing soil will push the plants out of the soil. So to prevent that, the plants need to be cultivated as soon as possible in the autumn time. In many places across Estonia, especially in Western Estonia, there are many forest estates that are where the moisture content of the soil is really high, and because of that, the growth of forest is pretty low, and the material you get from here is usually the energy wood type of material. And to make this site a bit better for the new planted generation of seedlings, we have made some ditches along the different compartments here to pull the moisture content out of the soil and to guide this excessive water out of the compartments, and this makes the soil less. The soil moisture content is a bit lower, and the planted seedlings have a much better growing conditions.
So if there are any questions regarding this video, I can also try to answer those questions. Yeah, Erik, please.
What I saw from the movie was that it seems that the forest land is quite flat, and I believe there is a risk for frost. What kind of silviculture measures do you take to minimize the risk for frost, especially in springtime?
To my knowledge, we are not doing anything in that regards. There is a risk, yes, like mentioned in the video, in the autumn time, we don't want to plant containerized plants, or we have to be very careful with that in mineral soils. When the soil freezes, then it might push the containerized plant out. But in the springtime, maybe some other Estonian who is listening can answer something, but I can't think of anything in the moment. Sorry.
I think about using some kind of shelter wood system to minimize the risk. Shelter trees.
In forest, not in nurseries.
In forest, I mean, if that is used in any way.
Maybe some owners use it. I don't think it's widely used. Yes, we actually we haven't had such frosts that new spruce or pine trees would be highly damaged. I can't remember that. I can't remember that this would be a very serious problem. I could be wrong now, but
okay.
Maybe we are so close to the sea that it's not a big problem. But I'm not very well informed about these methods. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
And I have another question. We saw the pre-commercial thinning. How often do you have to do it? Yearly or even more time? I don't know. And does the forest owner get any subsidies for pre-commercial thinning like we saw?
Yes, the pre-commercial thinning in the movie, it has to be done depending on what are the growing conditions and what the trees there are growing, especially if there is in this region we have very, let's say, problem with hazelnut that grows everywhere and very fast. So it needs to be done when it starts to overshade the planted trees. I will talk about that slightly in my next presentation also, but there are some subsidies if the forest is up to 3 years old, or if it's up to 3 years from the planting. Then there are a subsidy of 96 euros per hectare for cutting the grass around around the plants. It could be that with 3 years there is already very much hazelnut growing 2 meters high. Then you get the subsidy for cutting this 96 euros per hectare. The cost is higher, but the subsidy rate is fixed. For older stands, you get the subsidy for 159 euros per hectare. That's for up to 30-year-old forests, where you can also do this pre-commercial thinning and first thinning with that subsidy. Back, Thomas.
Yeah, so my question is also regarding that, I guess this pre-commercial thinning, which is kind of like almost like weeding, right? I mean, it's something that we Swedes are not familiar with at all. Pre-commercial thinning, yes, of trees. You were talking sort of about vegetation pressing down your seedlings. That's kind of like weeding. You mentioned the subsidy being, what you said, 95 euros per hectare or something like that?
Yeah, 96.
Yeah, so I'm guessing the actual cost per hectare is going to be around 200 maybe or something like that. Yeah.
Yes.
What would happen if you took away that subsidy? Here in Sweden, we're not familiar with subsidies. They've been gone for a while now. If you just postulate yourself, could you change your silvicultural system to avoid having to do this weeding?
Yeah, okay. Actually, what is a pre-commercial thinning? What is thinning and what is weeding? Yes, actually, in this video, we saw something in between of cutting the weeds and something between pre-commercial thinning. In Estonia, the terms are, yes, like in direct translation, weeding, then cutting to provide more light, and then thinning in the growing order like this. And quite often in the forest, it can be that one side of the forest needs weeding, one side of the forest needs pre-commercial thinning. Why we do this weeding? Could we change some practices? If we do the soil scarification and it's done in the rows and plants are planted in the rows, and if we plant open root spruce trees, then it could be that in most cases they don't need this weeding, or maybe they need it only once in first 3 years. However, if you plant container plants and the soil has good qualities, grass is growing there very well, then if we don't do this weeding, then we just have many of these spruce plants that die. The problem is, if compared to Finland, for example, I think it's also done less in Finland, but we have actually much more fertile soils, and the grass and different vegetation is growing very well. So in my opinion, we cannot change that we don't do this weeding at all. We still have to do it. Regarding subsidies, yes?
I'm just thinking, I think I'm sort of getting to the same point that Eric was getting at. If you have some type of a shelter wood, I think you would reduce this problem.
Perhaps, yes.
And then what I'm getting at is that I'm wondering if there's any kind of like, I don't know, research or sort of pondering about this fact that yes, a shelter wood brings with it problems, risks of storm fellings and such, but here you are producing a system where the state subsidizes tasks, weeding, that you could reduce if you, especially if you're talking about spruces now, using type of a shelter wood cuttings, or if you're using more of a two-tier silvicultural system, where you have you have some disadvantages from harvesting point of view and from the risk point of view, but you have a system where the state is subsidizing one task, which is a product of removing the upper tier. Mm-hmm. So what I'm wondering is that is there any discussion going on? Because as you know, if you had a very high or if you had a very dense upper tier, then you wouldn't have this grass growing, I presume, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, if we talk about shelter wood cutting, it's also growing a little bit in Estonia, and I think in the future it will be slightly more popular than it is nowadays. However, we haven't had good results with shelter wood cutting, and I have also visited some areas in Latvia. Maybe Latvians can have different opinion, but we have also visited some areas in Latvia where we also saw that the shelter wood cutting is not maybe the best solution also, because again, if compared to Finland, we have much more fertile soil, and we have very good grass or vegetation growth underneath shelter wood cutting also, but then we have less light under the shelter wood cutting, and we don't have young trees growing there. In some places in Estonia, in some pine stands especially, the shelter wood cutting works, but it's actually on quite few areas in some parts of Estonia. Shelter wood cutting for spruce and birch forests and in many pine forests, we haven't had good results with regeneration. maybe it is a combination of how much light we have, combination with our soil fertility, and also combination with our animal population, moose and deer population. But I would conclude this that I think we are moving to have more shelter root cutting in the future, but I don't think it will be majority. I think majority will still be clear cutting. And also the state subsidies, they actually don't cover all of this work. They cover a few hectares per owner every year. And the subsidy with the planting, with the weeding, with the soil scarification for all of Estonia is about, I think it's less than 2 million euros per every year. So I don't believe into subsidies that we should subsidize everything, but and of course the current solution is not the perfect solution, but I think it's somewhere between.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so if there are no more questions, I think we can come back in the next full hour when I will continue about thinnings.
Thank you, Allar. See you soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm having few technical problems. I hope to start the presentation soon. I guess you can't see my screen in the moment.
No, only the desktop.
Oh, yeah, you can see my desktop. Okay, good.
Mm-hmm.
So now you should see the presentation.
Yes, we do.
Okay, good. Sorry. So now we talked about how we get the new forest generation going. And now we move a little bit forward. Here you can see young spruce stand. That this spruce in the left, they don't need any maintenance in the moment. But the forest can be quite different just a few meters away. And if I look to the right, this picture was made on the same spot basically. There is already quite high hazelnut bush growing. And sorry. And the spruce is okay in the moment, but it might need some pre-commercial thinning. Now, yeah, the difference between pre-commercial thinning and thinning, it was discussed before, and what is cutting weed and what is pre-commercial thinning. In Estonia, the legislation says that the difference comes from the breast height diameter that has to be 8 centimeters or higher. Then this work is considered as thinning, and under that it is considered as pre-commercial thinning. In Swedish, I think it's röjning and coloring, and in direct translation it is cutting to provide more light and just thinning. For the pre-commercial thinning, there are almost no rules. The forest owner can do whatever they want. And in most cases, there is no need for any rules, because if you have planted spruce or pine trees, you won't do anything bad to them anyways. However, thinning, it requires harvesting permission, and there are certain rules in regard of how much can be thinned. So thinning is where forest owners can sometimes get some income. And while 99% of the forest owners, in my opinion, would not need any rules, but we currently still have some rules for the thinning. So, for example, in the upper left side, you can see a screenshot from Estonian forest register, where for every thinning or clear cutting permission or shelter wood cutting permission, you can see it in the registers that this work is allowed by the environmental board. So if the forest owner walks in the forest and sees some clear cutting, they can check if there is a permission for that. Again, in 99.9% times, there is the permission for that. We don't have many problems with cutting without permissions. And in the right side of the screen, you can see this table that regulates how much can be harvested during thinning, or it actually regulates what is the outcome that there needs to be after the thinning. So, for example, this is a pine stand, mannick, and if you have a 15 meters high pine stand, it needs to have a basal area of 18.2 square meters per hectare when the thinning is complete. So if the basal area before was, let's say, 25, then you can cut it up to 18.2. If you cut it lower, then well, you might get some fines or something like this. So this is important part to consider when people do thinning. Well, why we do this this work? Of course, you all know this as foresters, but let's go over this once again. So pre-commercial thinning is often done so that we could regulate what tree species we have in the future forest. We can have, it's very easy to have spruce, birch, aspen, grey alder, and even maybe some maples growing in young stand that have come naturally. And with this pre-commercial thinning, you often cut down, let's say, 95% of the grey alder and maybe some birch, and so you could regulate the future composition of the forest. And thinning is done to use those trees that have fallen behind in the natural competition. We can use these trees for energy wood, maybe sometimes pulpwood. We can cut out trees that have bad stem quality, and we can also remove too big trees that are sometimes called the wolves of the forest, that take away the light and nutrients from many other trees around those. And I tried to figure out the measure. I'm sure there is some other measure also, but we have a problem with thinning in private forests. The private forest owners don't do this thinning enough. So, for example, in the state forests, thinnings were done on 35% larger area than final fellings in 2018. But in the same year, in private forests, the thinnings were only done on 40% or 47% smaller areas than final fellings. So actually, thinnings should be done once or twice during the forest growth, and it should be basically for 1 hectare you do final felling, you do 1 or 2 hectares of thinning, but the private forest owners don't do it enough because it's a cost, it's a difficult work, and the forest is growing anyways. Why should I thin it? It's often the impressions of the forest owners. So here is the private forest felling volumes in recent years. The biggest line is from clear fellings or regeneration fellings, and thinning is only this small part. Of course, in terms of volume, the thinning cannot be a larger part than clear cutting, but we think that in Estonian private forests, the thinning part could be 2 or even 3 times higher than it is in the moment. So yeah, here are some photos of forest, but this thinning work is usually done by foresters, not by owners, because when planting is work that the owner can do quite easily, thinning requires more skill, and it requires more expensive machines, and often the forest owners don't do this work by themselves. So there is a subsidy for forests that are under 30 years old for thinning, and this subsidy is 159 euros per hectare. This is EU subsidy. And this hopefully helps the forest owners to, if not do the work by themselves, then just order this work from the foresters. And the local forest owner associations also make training days for forest owners where they can discuss the aspects of thinning. So on this picture, there is one training day just recently. So these people on the picture, they are local, maybe some farmers, maybe some small forest owners. Forestry is not their main livelihood. They have maybe 1 hectare of forest, maybe 30 hectares of forest. And they are not forestry specialists. So the people from local association, they inform them about the subsidies that they can get. They show the effects of thinning. They visit the areas where thinning has been done in the past and areas where thinning has not been done, so that people could see that the thinning can have a good positive effect on the forest growth. And they discuss generally how this work can be done and what tools can be used, etc. So in my next slide, I will have a video. It should start playing somehow. 1 second. I'm not sure if you can hear the sound or not, but there's not much sound anyways. It's only a battery operated saw. It's just from this same training day. The Forest Owner Association member shows what trees to cut, how this work is done. Yeah, of course, he's not moving perfectly like he would do this as everyday work. He's just moving around the place next to the people. Well, in this video, you can see something like between a chainsaw and the brush cutter, and tool that is actually quite suitable for exactly this kind of forest. If this forest would be a little bit smaller, then there would be better to use a brush cutter. If it would be a little bit bigger forest, then you could use normal chainsaw. But in this certain type of forest, maybe this tool is the best for the forest owner. Well, for the thinning, it's always important to look what trees you cut. You have to look up a lot to find out the the worst trees that you want to cut away. And also, you might have some comments about the work safety if working so close to the people. Yeah, we know, we try to be better next time. And yeah, quite often there is a feeling that I don't want to cut down so many trees, especially in the birch forest that grows very densely. But actually, birch reacts very well to thinning. And there is a saying in Estonia that at first day, you should cut so much birch during the thinning that you feel sorry for the forest. And then next day, you should come back and cut 50% that is remaining. Then the birch stand is in the correct density. And now he found a tree that has bad stem quality in the upper part, and he cuts that down. But yeah, he acknowledges that he filled it in the very bad direction. Okay, sorry. The video ended there now, but that's again the end from my part. Now we have, I think, 2 more videos about thinnings and growing the forests. And if you would have been in Estonia, maybe we would have shown you the biggest oak tree in Estonia. This is not the biggest oak tree in this picture. This is the second biggest oak tree that even many Estonians don't know. So if you have any questions regarding my current presentation, please feel free to ask.
Is it common that forest owners use this type of combination of chainsaw and the steering saw? What we saw in the video.
Yeah, I think this combination is not very common because it's only suitable in some certain types of forests. And if the forest owner has a few hectares of forest, they usually buy a machine that's more suitable for them in the moment. And they are not used with these kinds of strange saws. They know the current normal chainsaw and they want to use that. This looks like some strange toy, maybe.
Thank you. I give the floor to Eric.
Eric, please.
The film you showed us, was that the pre-commercial thinning or was it the thinning?
Yes. May I please ask, in your opinion, in Sweden, what would this be called?
In Sweden, it was a pre-commercial thinning, because the question is, if it was a thinning, then we collect the wood and send it to the pulp mill. If it's a pre-commercial thinning, we leave it on the ground.
Yes, exactly.
So if it was a thinning, how do you collect the timber? And
yes, in this case, it was pre-commercial thinning, because this timber was not collected. Yeah, it was done only as part of the training day, but even if the work would have been done in all of this forest, actually this was the highest part of this forest. The remaining forest was a little bit smaller, so the trees would have been left on the ground. However, if the same type of the forest would have been very close to a road, it would have been a large area, then it would have been viable to collect this timber. and then it would have been called thinning. So in silvicultural means, it doesn't matter if it is called thinning or pre-commercial thinning. It's regulated only if we collect the timber. So I understand your question. I think this was currently pre-commercial thinning because the timber was not collected.
Yeah, thank you.
Back, Thomas?
Yeah, thanks for the video. It was very impressive to see. We have also a few enthusiasts here in Sweden using these waste level thin brush saws, and yeah, there are very good reasons for using them, and also for using the silvicultural system where they have their where they are beneficial. In other words, these kind of delayed thinnings. You have, as a forest owner, excellent choice in creating mixed forests, generally because you have let some of your pioneers take over. You have also an excellent insurance against browsing, and you also have the ability to produce high amounts of biomass. So it's very interesting, very impressive to see that someone is using just this type of a state-of-the-art tool, this battery-powered waste level brush saw. Excellent. So my question is then, as an Estonian forester, the people watching, were they all thinking that this was just some sort of a catastrophe stand, or were they able to see the sort of the benefits of this system?
Yeah, this stand was actually planted with spruce. It was planted 2 times. Both times the forest owner who planted it was also there, and he said that on the next day when he came back to the forest after the planting, most of the trees were already eaten by deer. So it's an extreme case where he wanted to plant spruce. He didn't even have time to cover it with this servacol, or what is it? And the spruce were eaten so fast. So then he let birch to grow there, and some spruce came naturally, and maybe some trees were left growing. This stand, yeah, it was perhaps a little bit overgrown because the branches started too high. The branches should cover about half of the stem. They were a little bit too high. What did the forest owners think? I don't know.
No, the question was all the foresters around there. I mean, what is the culture in Estonia? Are they standing there and saying, oh my God, this is a catastrophe, you shouldn't be using this tool because you have to be more active in initial thinning, pre-commercial thinning? Or could they see the benefits, as I was mentioning, of, for example, producing mixed forests, where you have the ability to, you don't have to invest. I mean, you just said yourself that the forest owner had already invested twice into planting and had failed. So, I mean, using these type of systems where you sort of delay your thinning because of the browsing, then the natural reaction is to have this kind of a waste level thinning, what you just saw now on the video. But what is the culture in Estonia? Is everyone sort of saying that this is not the ideal case, or can they see the benefits of this waste level thinning? Maybe you as a forester, or the other foresters in your company.
Yeah, it could be both ways. Maybe it depends how you look at this forest, in what kind of company you're working. I think currently in this kind of stand, people understood that maybe this work is a little bit late, but it's actually quite fine stand otherwise, because you couldn't do anything else, and then you let the natural regeneration grow. Of course, some people say that we should still plant more spruce and this, but I don't know how to comment more on that. It's not with the current situation in the forest. If we do this thinning, then it's okay, and people understand that. Of course, you could say that in the past you could have done something differently. I think the first thinning should have been done before, or pre-commercial thinning should have been done slightly before. But yeah, people, some foresters were also there. They discussed this, and they said that it's okay in the moment.
Okay, thank you.
So if there aren't any more questions, maybe Livia can start the next videos.
Yes.
The last estate we went to, we had pre-commercial thinning in a younger stand. It was about 5 years old. You could see birches up to 3 meters there. This stand here is about 15 years old, and this is all naturally regenerated. You can see this on the bottom layer. There's spruce here, and on the top layer it's mostly birches, and on the other side aspen as well. So this pre-commercial thinning was done last year, and in Estonia the small forest owners usually do all the forest work if they get subsidies for it. And this is one of the subsidies that comes from European Union. So yeah, it was done last year, and this is the picture that is available for us right now. This is quite well done. You can see the density of this stand was greatly reduced. There's about 2 or 3 meters of space between the trees, and this should be done usually when the young stand is about 10 to 15 years old. This is the best time to do this, and this density will stay as it is, and this, what you see here, becomes the future forest. Why to do these kind of pre-commercial thinnings? The reason is that the trees that are left growing here will now have much more sunlight. They have more nutrients from the soil, and they will put on a lot more biomass in the next coming years. And when this thinning was still a cost for the forest owner, there is no material here that could be utilized. Then the next one, which would probably be done in 10 years from now, from the next harvest, there is already some material available for selling. So the next work may be less costly, or even with a small profit margin for the owner. So this stand here is 25 years old. It's mostly a spruce. Spruce is the dominant species here, And as you can see, it was thinned last year. There's a lot of residue on the forest floor. So what I want to say is the thinning is very often regulated by the prices on the market. So many of you might think that why is this material here in the forest right now? It should be utilized, but when the prices are low, it's less costly to take this material out and sell it for a small margin, in contrast to just leaving it here in the forest, where it will become like a forest residue, and it will become the soil for the future forest, basically. So yeah, this is so we have gone through thinning, pre-commercial thinning in a really young age, 5 years old. The last stand we saw was 15 years old, and so this is could be the last or the second to last thinning that you do before the final cut. We have gone through a lot of thinnings today, and just to give you a second glance of what the forest would look like if there weren't any thinnings or any maintenance in this forest area, then it would look something like this, maybe. It's a mixed forest. There's birches, there are spruces, pines, and other smaller broadleaf species. And if you look on the other side of the road, then there's the treated area that looks maybe a bit better. Maybe not for all of you, but the growth of these trees on this side of the road will definitely speed up quickly now that they have the light and nutrient conditions, and it will become a solid forest one day.
Okay, thanks for Uku Merilo and for his forest association who helped us to make this video. Now I will turn on the next video as well. Second, please.
Valgustusraie peamiseks eesmärgiks on kujundada puistu liigilist koosseisu ning parandada valgus- ja toitetingimusi. Valgustusraiet tuleb planeerida aegsasti, arvestades ka metsa kasvukohatüüpi.
Ma isiklikult pean seda valgustusraiet kõige olulisemaks metsakasvatuslikuks võtteks, et sellega me kujundame tulevikuks puistu liigilise koosseisu. Järgmine raieliik peale valgustusi on siis harvendusraie, aga kui me seda valgustust ei tee, siis harvendusraie metsaomanikule mitte mingisugust tulu ei anna.
Kõige parem aeg valgustusraie tegemiseks on varakevad ning hilissügis, kui metsas on lihtsam liikuda ning see ei sega seal pesitsevaid lindusid.
Looduslikult tekkinud lehtmetsadest ei ole mõistlik teha väga varakult esimest valgustusraiet, et see mets peaks ikkagi olema 10 aastat vähemalt vana. On muidugi erandolukordi, kus on loodus andnud ka hästi palju kuuske sisse, siis võib ka hakata valgustusraietega veidi varem pihta, aga rusikareegel on see, et väga hea aeg on 10-15 aastane mets, kus esimest korda minna saega valgustusraiet tegema.
Valgustusraiet võiks võrrelda rohimisega. Raiel jäetakse kasvama terved, sirged ja korraliku võraga puud. Keskmiselt jääb pärast valgustusraiet hektari kohta alles 2000 kuni 6000 puud. Väga tihedate noorendike hooldamisel aga kuni 10 000 puud hektaril.
Lihtsalt näitan ühe niisuguse hea nipi, kuidas aru saada, et millal on paras, kui palju me siit neid puid peame välja võtma. Nagu me näeme, et siit me oleme välja raiunud ju circa 80% puid on välja raiutud. Aga kuidas saada aru, et kas see 20% nüüd on paras või mitte? Et selleks on üks hästi hea lihtne nipp. On siis üks 4-meetrine kaigas ja kui me teeme 4-meetrise ringi ümber enda, siis me saame 50 ruutmeetrit. Ja kui hektaril asub 10 000 ruutmeetrit, siis suhteliselt põhikooli matemaatikaga saame me aru, kui palju me hektarile puid alles oleme jätnud. Et toome siis sellise näite, et siin teeme niisuguse ringi, see puu läheb sisse, see kuusk jääb välja, see kask läheb sisse, 3, nii see jääb välja, 4, 5 jäävad sisse, jääb välja, 6, 7, 8, 9 ja 10 puud. Ehk siis siin hektaril on kasvama jäetud 2000 puud hektarile ja 50 ruutmeetris oli neid siis 10. Ja see oleks ka sellise kõrguse ja vanusega puistu puhul täiesti optimaalne tulemus, et 10 puud 50 ruutmeetri peale. Siin selja taga me näeme nüüd sellist metsa, mis on olnud täpselt sarnane mets, kus me nüüd ennem seda valgustusraiet teostasime, aga see mets on 10 aastat vanem. Ja siin on tehtud kõik need valgustusraied täpselt õigel ajal. Et circa 15 aastat tagasi esimene valgustusraie ja nüüd 3-4 aastat tagasi teine valgustusraie. Ja nüüd see mets on siis valmis, selles suhtes kõik kulutused on siia tehtud. Nüüd edaspidi on siit hakkab ainult metsaomanikule tulu tulema.
Noore metsa hooldamiseks on võimalik taotleda ka toetuseid. Täpsemat infot saab Erametsakeskusest või kohalikest metsaühistutest.
So please, back Thomas, if you still have a question.
Well, an excellent video. Thanks. Clearly, the guy should have been using that other saw, though. From all research has shown about these kind of waist level pole saws that from an ergonomic and a safety aspect, that's what he should have been using. He could have cut his leg very easily. He could have fell very easily. His back is, we've had many studies throughout the world where their backs get worn out when you go around with the chainsaw. So yeah, excellent. Well, thanks for showing two excellent videos where they had a good tool and one where they had an outdated tool. Thanks.
Actually, I must say that the guy in the video was the same guy that was in the previous video. It was the last video was just a few years older video, and I guess he didn't have it back then.
Yeah, that's the thing. These pole saws have just come in the last couple of years, but there have already been a number of studies around the world that have shown the better ergonomics and also better safety, but also, I mean, there's many other positive effects with this electrification. So yeah, well, he's done a good choice.
And actually, I must say, I would be quite interested if I haven't done much research in that, but if you have some research in that topic regarding battery operated machines, I would gladly look into this research.
Well, regarding especially there's actually, I'm on at the same time I'm here, I'm also in this conference on forest mechanization that's going on right now, the Kofi Formet conference. And there's actually just been a couple of those studies just being presented at that conference today and yesterday. So yeah, there's some fresh research there, but when I'm regarding to the ergonomics, they haven't been looking at necessarily electrification, but the difference between the pole saw and chainsaw, and that is huge.
Yes, I understand. And of course, you all might have seen from the where Uku was making the presentation in the slightly older thinned forest. There was really a lot of timber or woody biomass left on the ground, but yeah, it's not collected in this case. In some cases, it is collected. So basically, the same work can be called pre-commercial thinning in that case because the timber is not collected. But if the forest owner or some worker would have made the decision that we collect the timber, then the same kind of cutting would have been called thinning. So that's the only difference between thinning and pre-commercial thinning. Okay, it seems that we don't have many more questions. I think we have a question for you. If you actually saw the videos well, or did they run smoothly? Has anyone had problems with looking at these videos?
No, it's okay. It was good.
It was good, yes, thank you. It's nice to see also videos, not only presentations. I like that, so thank you for preparing that.
There will be more videos coming.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, next presentation I think will be about small harvesters that we are trying to use for cutting these young stands, and we are seeing where and how we can use this, even smaller than the Malva harvesters. But I think we will do it when the next hour starts.
Yes. So if we don't have any more questions, then maybe let's come back in 20 minutes and start with new presentation.
Okay.
Okay. I hope people are slowly arriving and I can turn on. We can talk about drones and mini machines used in forestry. So first I'll turn on the video about using drones in forestry.
Täna räägime ja vaatame, kuidas on võimalik droone metsanduses kasutada. Ja siin välja toodud kaks sellist mudelit, üks on siis Phantom ja teine on Mavic 2 Zoom, mida oleme ise kasutanud väga edukalt. Aga enne seda, kui me kasutamisest räägime, tahan öelda seda, et kõigepealt peaks seadmeid transportima spetsiaalsetes kas kohvrites või kottides, et nad viga ei saaks. Iga kord enne lennu peale minekut või lendama asumist tuleb jälgida, et tiivikud oleksid korrektselt korras, et ei oleks vigastatud, et ei oleks kukkumisi ega selliseid muljumise jälgi. et lennumasinad oleksid korrektselt korras, jälgima, et akud oleksid kindlasti täis. Ja seejärel võib nii-öelda lendama asuda, aga nüüd peab jälgima veel seda, et paljudes kohtades ei või drooniga lennata. Ja hästi kasulik on kõigepealt teada saada, mismoodi drooniga üldse lennata võib. Ehk siis Transpordiameti kodulehelt peaks igaüks siis järgi vaatama ja vajadusel tegema ühekordse lennuloa. Ja miks üldse metsanduses peaks droone kasutama? On väga lihtne põhjus. Ta vähendab kindlasti jalavaeva ja kiirendab tööde ülevaatamist. Ja täna proovimegi seda kõike vaadata, et eks te saate ise hinnata, kui hästi see meil siis välja tuleb. Kui pult on valitud selline, kuhu tahvel vahele käib, siis tegelikult on väga hea programm, selline e-mets, kus on võimalik droonilennu ajal ka kuvada eraldise digitaalset kihti alla ortofotole või peale ja siis on palju mugavam tuvastada nii-öelda eraldisi ja saada aru, et kas tööd ja tegemised on eraldise piires tehtud või siis mitte. Siin on näha nüüd lageraiala, seemne säilik puudega. Ja sellel lageraie objektil on veel materjal metsast välja viimata. On nii raidmehunnikud kui siis materjal ilusti kenasti hunnikusse pandud ja siit saab ülevaate, et kuidas nad paiknevad ja saab planeerida siis kokku vedu. Siin on ka masinad veel näha, on harvester vasakul nurgas ja forwarder siin. Kenasti on seemnesäilikuid kohati grupiti jäetud, sealpool ka. Ja siis on näha siin selline looduslik oja, mida õnneks ei ole eriti lõhutud. Et on üsna hästi säilinud. Sellel objektil on ka näha, et sortiment on ilusasti välja viidud. Siin on näha ka, kuhu on tekkinud seda pinnase kahjustust, mida siis peab jälgima siis kas maapinna ettevalmistamisel või loodusliku uuendusele jätmisel. Maapinna ettevalmistamine on väga hästi jälgitav õhust ka ortofotodelt on see aastaid nähtav ja siin on väga selgesti näha, et vagude põhjas on kohati vesi peal ja pinnas on nii palju siis külje peale tõstetud ja seal on looduslik uuendus tärganud. Et väga hästi selline sigri-migri ongi maapinna ettevalmistamine ja siin kohe kõrval on ka maaparandusobjekt, 2 kraavi, mis on kenasti hooldatud ja peale raiet raidmetest tühjad. Siin on küll natukene tormiheidet ja ladvad olid kraavis, aga midagi ummistust pole tekkinud ja selles mõttes on kõik korras. Ja siin on tegelikult näha ka väga hästi voolunõvad, mille kaudu siis juhitakse liigvesi ära. Siin on neid väga palju tehtud ja siin paremal pool on väga ilusasti säilitatud loodusliku kujuga selline kraavikene. Ja need on väga väärtuslikud ja need tasubki sellisena hoida, et ei tohiks sirgeks kaevata. Drooniga on selles mõttes hea, et kui mingisuguse nurga all väga hästi ei näe, siis tegelikult saab sellise väikse tiiru objektile peale teha ja vaadata seda objekti siis natukene teise nurga alt või siis kui vaja, siis ka isegi korraks droon seisma jätta. Et siin kraavidest üle sõites nägime, et kui ei ole ka kopratamme ega mingisuguseid voolavee takistusi jälle voonunevad ja kraavisüsteem selline looduslik on väga ilus vaadata. Siin on jälle näha selline rekonstrueeritud kraavikene, väga hästi nähtav, kuidas mismoodi kõik siin vasakul pool tuleb truubitoru, ilusasti nähtav. Põhimõtteliselt ei ole vaja kogu seda maaparandussüsteemi läbi käia jala, vaid drooniga on väga hästi jälgitav. Saab vaadata ära kõik sellised tööd ja tegemised, mida sellel objektil siis vaja teha oli. Metsauuenduse hooldamise juures on väga tähtis, et saaksid siis puutaimed, männid konkreetsel juhul vabastada nii-öelda siis rohu ja muust sellisest lehtpuudest, et nad saaksid ilusasti vabalt kasvada. Siin on näha samuti sellist kultuurihoolduse objekti, kus siis on rohkem rohurinnet ja see on kenasti hooldatud. Maapind on tehtud siin vagudena, on ilusti taimed istutatud, väga hästi hooldatud ja drooniga saab hästi madalalt lennata ja vaadata, kuidas see nähtavus on. Et siin on väga hästi näha valgustusraie käigus maha lõigatud puud. Kõik sellised valged tüvekesed on kased ja mõned remmelgad on siuksed hallikamad. Valgustusraiegagi, kui on väga korralikult tehtud, siis saab teha selle vaatluse piisavalt kõrgelt, 100 meetri kõrguselt ja täiesti rahulikult näeb ära ja on võimalik siis seda tööd hinnata. Siin on nüüd samamoodi sellise segametsaga tegu, kus on näha, et valdavalt on siis kaske ära lõigatud ja antud siis kasvanejatele puudele sobivamad valgustingimused ja vähendatud toitaine siis konkurentsi. Harvendusraie tehakse juba natukene vanemas metsas, kus siis lõigatakse metsa sisse kokkuveoteed. Siin on 2 tükki näha ja nende kaudu siis veetakse siis materjal, mis sealt lõigatakse välja. Ka on näha, et ilusasti harvendusraie on tehtud. Puude omavaheline kaugus on korrigeeritud ja midagi häirivat ei ole. Kus on siis see kuusa osalus suurem, sealt on siis kaset välja raiutud ja muus osas on tehtud siis sellist üldist harvendamist. See on väga ilus segametsa lank, kus on näha samuti sellist väga suure väljaraie protsendiga valgustusraiet ja kohati, kus on siis sellised kuuse enamusega tukad, sealt on siis lehtpuud rohkem välja lõigatud ja siin keskel ja paremal pool ääres siis on kasega tegu ja see on kenasti harvendatud.
Okay, so this was video about the drones. If anyone has questions, then please ask now. Okay, back Thomas. has questions.
Yeah, just wondering, I saw from the drone video there, that was very nice, by the way, that there wasn't that much branches and woody residue on the ground where the machines have driven. There seemed to have been, well, you know, they acknowledged some soil damage and such, but I didn't see very much branches, you know, logging residues slash on the drive or the, you know, on the strip roads. What's the Estonian recommendations on soil, protecting the soil with slash?
Yes, we have a regulation about how much soil damage can occur, and if this damage occurs, then it must be smoothened out later. We use quite often branches on the strip roads to protect the forest soil, but also to prevent machines from getting stuck. Yeah, in these videos, probably the soil was actually quite good because in Estonia, we have very thick layers of different soil types before we get any hard rock surface. In Sweden, in Finland, it's different. So in most cases, we could use all of the branches to prevent all kind of damage, but then we couldn't get any biomass out. So I think the current practice is that if the machines won't make, let's say, too deep tracks on all of the site, then it's cheaper to collect the biomass and then smoothen out the tracks.
Okay, that's I would say that's exactly opposite to the 95% of the Swedish cuttings, where we are very where we say drive on the slash as the priority number one, and then if you want to remove the slash, you can remove the slash that you haven't driven upon. Because even like you say, you can smoothen out some soil damage, but there's still you've still had leaching of methyl mercury. That's just gets worse if you try to have an excavator come in there afterwards. You can have lots of other disadvantages. You don't get reduce the soil compaction, for example, if there's been any kind of compaction on fine grained soils. You don't get that. You don't loosen that compaction with your excavator. So yeah, I'm kind of surprised to hear that, because then you have a system where you're sort of accepting sort of environmental damage and using biomass as some sort of a I don't know, excuse to to have that environmental damage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, of course, in thinnings, it's not the case. In thinnings, we still drive on the branches. Yes, in clear cuttings, it still is. How I said that we try to how to say it, not use too much biomass. Maybe it's even not about using biomass, but we often have so many problems. The soil is so wet that very often the biomass doesn't help also. In some cases, we have to fell trees in the tracks so we could drive. But if it's not the case, and if the machines can drive, then it's often done, yeah, like having this soil damage. I agree with you that it's not a good option. We should try to be better in that. Also smoothening out it with excavator, it might cause additional damage, but yeah, the practice in Estonian forestry in those terms is maybe not the best in the moment. But it's also important to understand that we have about, I don't know, 8 to 10 months per year where we have very wet weather. And in many cases, even the biomass won't help in keeping the machines above the ground. So it's often a decision between two bad options, what to do, and often the decision is like this.
Yeah, I can understand that, especially on peat soils. However, I would say that if you look to the example of how they do it in the Great Britain, when they harvest, everything is always wet and always poor bearing capacity, and they use what they call brash mats to drive on, very, very thick. And I think it's of course there's a lot of parameters here that can hinder you from creating like a solid brash mat on wet soils, but it seems that I think that even there's lessons to be learned. For example, if you look at Great Britain, maybe you guys in Estonia can check that out, how they work there.
Yeah, and of course these kinds of methods are used, but yeah, we have often soil damage, and of course there is room for learning. And I think one of the next videos shows how we can use smaller machines that maybe don't damage the soil so much.
Okay, excellent, thanks.
I have also one question. We saw in the video, I must say that I like video very much. We saw in video a lot of thin woods lying around after thinning. So my question is, it can be used for biomass. Is there no market for this thin wood in Estonia, or is the question of costs, or this wood will be actually extracted later on, or it will just stay there?
Yes, there is market for biomass in Estonia, and biomass is collected mainly from final fellings as a form of branches, but it is also sometimes collected from thinnings. When you do thinning, it's important the thinning is done to provide better forest for the future. So there are these risks that if you collect biomass from the thinnings, you might again damage the soil, you can damage the roots of the trees, and also with machine moving around in the forest and picking up the residue, it might damage the trees also. I would say when I was doing this work, organizing thinnings and clear cuttings, I would say that maybe 10% of the areas where we collected residues from the thinnings, and mainly these were older thinnings, 40, 50-year-old stands maybe. In these young stands, you can collect it, but again, the problem is that if you want to put this material in a pile that you can pick up later, then you take away room from the remaining trees. Then you have to cut down some more remaining trees to put the material in the piles. And when you collect the piles, then you might damage the remaining trees also. So usually from the young stands, if it's only biomass, then it's not collected very often. If it has enough diameter that you can use pulpwood, then maybe sometimes only pulpwood is collected. But yeah, there are many options depending on the forest and also on the soil type, because in the thinnings you don't want to drive around too much.
Okay, thank you. I was asking because one of our good practice example actually represents the thinning operation with harvesting machine using collective heft. So something maybe it will be interesting for you to see, because we are usually doing as you presented. So mainly the biomass, this young stands stays in the forest, also because of costs, not only damages that you mentioned. But we had these trials here in the frame of another research project with the machine coming from Sweden. And it was an interesting exercise also for our foresters to see how the machine can work in these young stands. And we then compared the results. So it was interesting. Okay, thank you.
Yes, if I'm not wrong, I actually saw some kind of presentation on this topic. Maybe it was from this same project. We also sometimes do thinning with excavators that have this guillotine head that has also that can collect the stems without putting it down in meantime. This is also used sometimes, and maybe in the future we will use harvesters with these collector heads. That is one option how to do it better, but we'll see what will happen in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I can turn on the video about mini machines. 1 second, please.
Milleks on vaja metsa hooldada. Aga arvan ikka, et inimese jaoks. Et me seame omale eesmärgid, mida me tahame metsast saada, mida me tahame tulevikus näha ja selle järgi siis teeme ka selle hooldamise töö. Võib-olla alustaks ehk sellest valgustusraiest, mis me kõrval näeme seal. See on kuskil 5 aastat peale lageraiet on uuendatud, istutatud kuuske ja mändi sinna ja praegu on sealt käsimees on võsa lasnud ära vähemaks, et lehtpuu ei lämmataks okaspuid ära. Ja nüüd edasi minnes siin on juhtunud selline lugu. See kuivenduskraav on lõikanud ühe eralduse pooleks, mis eelnevalt oli kõik ühetaoline, aga praegu on erinevus päris suur. Siit minust vasakul käel on tehtud nii-öelda ette raie käsitsi võsasaega. Ja nagu näha võib, on see päris tihe. Üldjuhul tehakse ka seda, võetakse rohkem käsitsi välja, aga see materjal kõik jääb sinna sama selle maha kõdunema. No võiks jah öelda, et äkki on meil väetist vaja seda kõdu sinna, aga kui me siit kaavikaldast vaatame, siis on see mullakiht päris paks ja siin selle väetisega probleemi ei ole ja kasvukoht on ka selline, mis kasvatab lehtpuud ja nagu näha, ka sang leppa päris hästi. Aga siin teisel pool on tehtud seesama käsitöö võsasaega ja peale seda on läbi käidud miniharvesteriga. Ja siit on materjal kõik kokku veetud, saetud materjal, siit tuli välja kusagil 45 tihu hektari kohta. Kulud kattis ära see välja raiutud materjal. Teistpidi oleks see läinud maaomanikule, metsaomanikule maksma kuskil 400 kuni 500 eurot hektari kohta tööraha. Aga ta kulutas siia ainult 100 eurot ette raiele. Et juba see võiks olla üks argument, miks kasutada näiteks minimasinat. Ja kui nüüd edasi minna sellega, siis siin järgmise töö võib teha ka veel minimasinaga. Kuid 10 aasta pärast näiteks, kui pidada arvendusraie vaheks 10 aastat, siis võime tulla siia ka suurema masinaga. Minimasin on see 2,5 tonnine Usewood, mida mina olen propageerinud.
Tere! Mina olen siis Tõnu, Usewood Eesti juhatuse liige ja ehitame siin Kikeveres masinaid nüüd. Alates sellest aastast on see nüüd Eesti toode ja proovime sellega metsamajandust nagu paremaks teha noorte metsade tarbeks. Seda tegemata tööd on väga palju meie metsades. Ja siis tekkis meil ka huvi selle vastu umbes 6 aastat tagasi, et majandada siin selliste väikeste masinatega neid metsasid. Tooteid on meil 3 traktorit. On harvester, on vedaja ja on kombimasin. Ja meie oleme pidevalt kasutanud seda nagu harvesteri ja vedajat, siis oleks see töö nagu kõige efektiivsem ja tulusam kõigile. Kombimasin jääb siis sinna nagu metsaomanike, suurmetsaomanike pärusmaale, et saaks majandada oma metsi ise omast vabast ajast ja toimetada seal vaikselt. Euroopa Liidus kasutatava mootorid nüüd peaksid olema E5 mootorid. Sellel isendil on siin E2 mootor. See toodang läheb nagu 3. riiki, 3. maasse, ütleme niimoodi. Kus on samamoodi tõusnud huvi nende väikeste masinate vastu. Kombimasinal on siis 3-käigulised. Võimalus on siis esimese käiguga, kus on kõik 8 ratast lukus. Teise käiguga on esimese paar rattaid lukus ja 3. on nagu transportkäik, millega saab siis tee peal ennast kiiremini kuskil edasi viia. Kiirus on tal ligi lähedalt 12 kilomeetrit tunnis 3. käiguga. Vedajal, forwarderil nagu on veel keerav tagasild, mis annab eelise peenikeses väikses puistus puude vahel manööverdamiseks. Masin tuleks täpselt oma esirataste jälgi pidi nagu järgi ja kahjustamata vähem puid.
Siin on hooldatud mets. Võiks ka öelda, et puupõld, sest enne neid kaski oli siin lagemaa, heinamaa. Aga hooldamisega olemegi jõudnud sellise tulemuseni, mis praegu on ja ma arvan, et see on päris ilus. Selles metsas on tehtud, või ütleme, võssa kasvanud põllul, siis ta on tehtud valgustusraie aastaid tagasi. Kasutasime ära erametsa toetust. Ja on tehtud 3 aastat tagasi siis nüüd minimasinaga harvendusraie. Kuna see oli suhteliselt välja veninud ja tihe gaasiks, siis tugevat harvendust siin teha ei saanud. Ta on suhteliselt tihedaks jäänud kase kohta ka praegu. Mis hooldamise eesmärk? Eesmärk on, nagu siin näha, on tööd suhteliselt sirged. Kui nüüd mõelda puidu töötlemise peale, siis mehaanilise töötlemise jaoks kindlasti on sirgem puu parem, sest selle kasuliku materjali väljatulek sirgest puust on suurem kui kõvera puu puhul. Kui me jälle hooldamise eesmärgiks ja puidu kasutuse eesmärgiks seame lihtsalt keemilist töötamist, võib-olla siis ei olegi sellist hooldamist päriselt vaja, et ka kõverpuu annab selle mahu välja, mis sirge tüvi, kuid teistpidi jälle, kui me oleks selle hooldamata jätnud selle puistu, siis oleks siin palju peenikesi tüvesid. Ja igal juhul on seal puidu osakaal lõpptulemus on ikkagi väiksem. Koort on jälle rohkem peenikesed puud kokku annavad. Ja kindlasti veel, mis on ilma hooldamata tekivad need üksikud suured ülevalitsevad puud, mis kasvatavad suuri jämedamaid oksi, need on hoolduse käigus kõik välja võetud. Ja selliselt me saame selle tulevikupuu, mida meil on niisamagi lihtsalt ilus vaadata. Teistpidi jälle ilma majanduseta ei ole meil ka looduskaitset ega tantsu ega laulupidu. Et siit me saame tulevikus saagida ka igasugust tarbematerjali. Ja teistpidi veel edasi minnes, kuna see töö on siin tehtud minimasinatega saetud ja kokku veetud, ei ole siin kokkuveoteid praegu sees rohkem kui see üks peatee. Ja on õnnestunud säilitada või tähendab minimasinaga on võimalik säilitada seda kuuse järelkasvu rohkem kui näiteks samasuguses metsas suurema masinaga töötada. Ja ka see annab meile võimaluse kasvatada siin kase all välja see kuusk ja minna ka sujuvalt üle näiteks kuusemetsale, kui meil on tahtmist ja soovi niimoodi mitme käiguga siin seda hooldustööd teha. Ja mis nüüd elurikkusesse puutub, siin metsa all, kui me siia ruumi ja valgust tegime, kasvab igasuguseid erinevaid taimi. Tavaliselt need niidutaimed isegi, mis on eelnevalt siin talu heinamaal, karjamaal kasvanud, ka neid leiab siit. Ja eks see pinnase tallamine ongi selline, see on väga erinev, meie pinnased on muutlikud, kui on ilus kuiv liivamaa, seal on väga lihtne asju ajada, aga siin ümbruskonnas on iga 100 meetri tagant või isegi kiiremini see pinnas muutub ja tuleb lähenedele uut moodi. Selle kohta kuulsin, Rootsis oli neil eraldi uuring tehtud selle pinnase kohta ja see kaardikiht on metsavarujatel lausa kättesaadav oli, et nad eraduste viisi said planeerida oma materjali kokkuvedu selle mikroreljeefi järgi lausa. Et võib-olla jõuame ka meie üsna varsti selle tulemuseni.
Okay, we also have, Back Thomas has a question, please.
I think Jasa is first.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Really nice video, great. It's really nice that you are making so small machines. We mostly see in the video, I think, the forwarders. The guy who was building it was talking a little bit about combi machines. Do you have also like this harvester, which also is extracting wood, or is more divided in or harvester or forwarder? And what do you think about the combi machines?
We also have here the founder of Usewood, Eesti, Tiit Kosenkranius, who was in that video. I can ask from him. But so your question was, are we using all of those 3 machines, combi, harvester, and the forwarder, or which one of them are we using the most?
Yes.
The question was also regarding a harvester. That's what he was wondering when it's harvesting and extracting at the same time. Harvester is the word.
Tiit, kas sa said küsimusest aru, kas oskad vastata?
Tõlgi mulle palun see üle.
Ma tõlgin äkki ise, Tiit, kui võib, et äkki sa ütled, et kui palju, kuidas see jaguneb, et kui palju on harvesteri no see kombimasinat nii-öelda ja kui palju on eraldi siis seda harvesteri ja kokkuvedajat, et kuidas seda kasutatakse?
Meie Eestis oleme kasutanud põhiliselt eraldi harvesteri ja kokkuveotraktorit, aga on ka päris mitu kombimasinat. Kombimasinaid on tellitud varasematel aastatel Rootsi metsaomanikud, kes on oma metsas tahtnud ise oma tööd teha, saagida ja kokku vedada. Nii et jagunevad praktiliselt ühetaoliselt, et erinevust nagu väga ei ole.
So Tiit said that actually mostly still harvester or forwarder is ordered from them, but actually many or some Swedish forest owners have ordered these combi machines for themselves because they have a lot of forest, they have free time and they want to do this work by themselves. And in that case, the combi machine is best.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I think also Livia has actually some slides about these machines also, so maybe some of these answers come from these slides, if I am right, Livia.
Yes, those slides actually have just pictures about thinnings that have been done by small machines, and also characteristics, technical characteristics about those machines. I don't know if it's, should I show them now, or I will just share them later?
Yeah, later when you come to this, no problem. Just this interesting idea at those so small stands, since you are already once in, maybe sometimes it's not good. With combi machine, it's only one approach to one side enough. With other, you need to go twice and do twice the damage. But yeah, just I wanted to hear your how are you doing? So yeah, thank you for the answer.
Yeah, it could be that in small thinnings, the combi machines have lower impact on the remaining trees. It could be so, yes.
I will just show some slides about this. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
Yes, we can see, and yeah, now we can see the full mode.
So those pictures were sent by Tiit Kosankranius, who was in that video. So thinnings that have been done by mini machines. The mini harvester itself, photo of it, where it can be carried by a car trailer. So this is those are those technical characteristics, quite specific details. Another photo of a mini harvester. A harvester being transported on ferry to one island, to Estonia. This is a mini forwarder. So details about it. Combi machine with some details again. And I guess that's it. Do you have any more questions?
This we were missing a little bit before. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also just like to say that that's very, very nice information and video on the mini machines as well. Thanks. So what I'm seeing is that there seems to be a niche for some smaller machines. If we compare to how the sort of the development for the mini machines in Sweden are, it seems that perhaps the weaker bearing capacity, where you have focus on smaller machines with that have a lower ground pressure, seems to be a success factor. The operator wage, what's that like in Estonia? Because that becomes a factor as well. The smaller machines have a less productivity, so you have to pay, in comparison, a higher wage per cubic meter harvested. What's an operator wage like in Estonia?
Tiit, kas sa soovid äkki rääkida, kui palju need mehed palka saavad, kes selle masina samgade taga on?
Jah, meil on siin 6 aastat olnud ühed ja samad mehed töötamas ja ei ole ära läinud, järelikult on olnud palk piisav.
Väga hea. So they have had on some machines same people working for 6 years. They haven't changed or left the company, so it means that the wage is enough and it's a good wage. So yeah, okay, I understand your question, and actually these mini machines they are important in this aspect that we can't find people to work in the forest with chainsaws and brush saws. So people want to work in cabins. They want to have protection from the rain and from the sun. In these terms, these mini machines are very important. Without those, we would have these all-terrain vehicles, ATVs, with some small forest trailers. These are actually mostly usable for maintaining your own forest, for doing it for fun and not earning money. And the next biggest machines would be in the class of, let's say, 5 tons, like Malva harvesters or some normal smaller forest tractors with forest trailer. Smaller field tractors that are used in agricultural work most of the time, and then sometimes a forest tractor is put behind them. But I think these mini machines fill the slot between those machines, and they can ask the wage for I think better wage than the people who would work without machine and with only chainsaws. But I'm not able to give you a certain number.
Okay, yeah. No, I mean, just how it is here in Sweden, it's, I mean, the next class up for us is, we'd group this into the Malva category as well. But then the next class up would be the, the thinning big machines, like the 12, 14 ton machines. And it's just, I'm just reflecting that, here it's, it becomes sort of a question of economics when you have these mini machines, the Malva or the Usewood or whatever else. You have comparatively higher operator wage, like I say, per cubic meter harvested at roadside. So that becomes a factor sort of against the mini machines here on this side of the Baltic Sea. But otherwise, what I was thinking is that, well, if you don't really worry much about soil disturbance, there should be a push towards more the 10, 12, 14 ton machines, because they become more productive. So I'm just wondering, looking at your the other video there, where you smoothed out the ground disturbance after a while, and why aren't you moving on then towards the 10, 12, 14 ton machines, which have even higher productivity?
Yeah, well, of course we care about soil damage, and we understand that it's not only mud that we have to smoothen out, but the soil has different layers, and it's bad if it damages the soil. Yes. I think it can be in many cases that it doesn't matter how heavy the machine is. If the soil won't have enough density to keep the machine on the soil, then even the 12-ton machine can fall through. It's sometimes not the weight. It's sometimes just that you have a normal soil, and then for 50 meters the soil doesn't hold anything, and then you just fall through, and the smaller machines might get stuck because they have smaller wheels. So the biggest machines just push through the mud. And even the branches might not hold even the smallest machines not sinking.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, does anyone have more questions, or we can go on a break? Yes, let's then go on our break and be back in 12 minutes. For our last presentation. Bye.
Okay, thanks.
Ja aitäh, Tiit, sulle.
Okay, let's start. So is everybody here? Looks like. Without any introduction, I start with my slides. My presentation is today the last, and I will tell you about the topic, who is an Estonian forest owner and forest manager. And I have prepared a couple of slides, but before we are talking about forest owner and manager, I will tell you about, I will tell you about a competition which is provided in Estonia. So every year we are providing, it means between our institution, Estonian Private Forest Center, and Estonian Private Forest Union, we organize together a competition to find the best forest manager in Estonia. And there are no limits to this in this competition to participate. It doesn't matter, are you a physical person or a legal person, have you a lot of forest or less forest. Important is that you have been provided a lot of activities during last years related to very different forest values. But of course, like a competition, we have a lot of persons who cannot be the first, but just participate and find the high places, and all of them are recognized for their work. And last year, the prizes were given by company Steel. I think it's very well known. So, and now I ask Livia, please, could you show a small video about this competition? I stop sharing the slides at the moment.
I will put it on.
Igal aastal valivad Eesti Erametsaliit ja Erametsakeskus aasta parimat metsamajandajat. Sel aastal pärjati auväärse tiitliga Mihkel Jürisson, kelle perele kuulub kokku umbes 2000 hektarit metsa ja 600 hektarit põllumaid.
Raiume kuskil 10 000
tihu aastas, et see on meil selline, talve saame tööd teha.
Et sa ikkagi majandad üsna intensiivselt oma neid metsi?
Eks me peame majandama, sest meil tagastatud maid on 7 hektarit kokku.
Sellest 2000-st?
2000-st, ja need on tulnud osta ja ega inimesed, kes müüvad neid, nad ei kipu neid väga hea hinnaga müüma. Ikkagi küsitakse sellist maksimaalset summat, mis on ka inimlikult ju täiesti arusaadav ja selge.
Kuidas sinust metsamajandaja saanud on?
Sellest on juba 2-30 aastat möödas peaaegu. Enne seda punusin korve.
Punusid korve?
Ja, mul mõlemad tema isa olid korvipunujad mingisuguse perioodi elust. Ja siis ma suutsin juba raha teenida, et mootor sai raha.
Korvi punumisega?
Ja ma mäletan, et see oli kuskil 92 peale raha reformi kuugaks, et siis ma läksin Tallinna kaubamajast, ostsin esimese mootorsae. Ja siis sai esimesed RMK-langid ostetud sanitarraided ja nii ta vaikselt tuli. Või alustatud sai ju ikkagi saemeestega. Ma mäletan, rekord hetkel oli 40 saemeest veel. Aga nii kui need saemehed hakkasid vaikselt ära kaduma, elujärg läks kõigi paremaks, siis need saemed kadusid ja siis tuligi paratamatu üleminek siis harvesteride peale. Me oleme praegu sellises 4-5-60 aastases kuusikus.
See on nüüd istutatud kuusik, eks ole?
See on istutatud kuusik ja siin oli nüüd siis juuli keskel torm ja siis mõned puud on ümber lükanud. Et ma suvel, kevadel, suvise perioodil raiun suht vähe. Aga paraku seda tuleb, et niimoodi päris ka ei saa öelda, et üldse ei raiu. Need sanitaripuud me võtame siin lähiaegadel ära.
No väga kontrollitud tingimustes tohin ma korra siia kabiini ikkagi minna ja vähemasti vaadata, kuidas see masin töötab. Mis siis, et ma ise sellega midagi teha ei tohi. Assisteerimine on ka väga oluline roll. Metsa majandamisel on langetustöödega võrdväärselt oluline muidugi ka metsa uuendamine. Lageraie järel asub Mihkel üldjuhul juba sama aasta kevadel tegutsema.
Ma teen natuke võib-olla teistmoodi kui ma paljudki. Mul on künnimasin, mis on vana Belarus ja siis on peal üks udupeen prakekülvik, mis siis paneb seemne täpsusega seemned mulda. Männikuuse seemned ma teen segu, veerand kuuske ja 3 veerand mändi.
Kui kiiresti üks väikene puukene sellest seemnest üldse kasvab?
No siin me olemegi sellise koha peal, kus on nüüd väiksed taimed. Siin on nüüd siis 2-3 aastat tagasi küntud, peaks olema 3 aastat tagasi. Ja nüüd siis siia on ka osaliselt mändi istutatud, aga see lõik siin on külvimänd.
No siin on üks kuuseke.
Ja see kuusk ongi nüüd siis tulnud sellest külvist, et siin on selline väga hästi kasvama läinud koht, ja meil on valdavalt liivamaad kõik siin mul kodu ümber, et meil külv annab lihtsalt nii head tulemust.
40-50 aastat ja siis poeg Markus võib need puud maha võtta?
No tegelikult ikkagi männiga meil küpsuse vanus on seal 90-ga. Nii et aga diameeter lubab raiuda jah, et me üldjuhul heal boniteedil saame ta kuskil 6-7-80 aastaselt raiuküpseks.
Teisipidi on ka need metsad, mida sina täna ju majandad, suuresti ikkagi kellegi teise käsitsi kunagi istutatud, eks ole, et see vist ongi see, et kui sa võtad, siis sa annad ikkagi ka tagasi.
Ja suuresti ta ongi ka minu siin koduümbruse metsad on enamus kõik endised põllud, et me praegu asume ka põllumaadel, siin aastaid põllud kõik.
Suure metsamajandamise kõrval püüab Mihkel luua oma metsades ka vaba ja veetmise võimalusi. Näiteks leidub siin nii matkateid kui lõkkekohti. Ise ütleb ta tagasihoidlikult, et see on väike kõrvaline luksus, mida saabki lubada vaid tänu mastaapsele majandamisele. Olgu sellega, kuidas on, kuid on näha, et tänu Jürissonide panusele on ilusti korras ka Mädara külaplats ja selle ümbrus.
Need väiksed mäed või mõne jaoks Otepää mõistes on need sellised künkad, et minu jaoks on nad lapsepeales suured mäed olnud ja ma olen siin suusatama õppinud. Mõnedki puusuusad on siin vastu puid puruks sõidetud. Nii et eks sellest on ka tulnud selline kokkukasvamine selle kohaga.
Mis rada see siin on keset suve?
See näiteks ongi suusarada võib-olla.
Suusarada, jah?
Jah. Ja me ka Euroopa Liidu abi toel ostsime mingi suusaramasina.
Ussa?
ja siis ma olen neid hoidnud sees jah, aga jälle sellega kipub see asi olema, et viimased aastad on see asi niru olnud.
Sa lihtsalt lükkad mulda laiali, sest et lund ei ole, eks ole.
Ja siin ongi, natuke on ka probleem selles siin, et see on ilus suur vägev 130-aastane männik peal ja need puud on natuke tihedad. Ja siis, kui see väike lumi sajab, siis kipub olema see, et siia maa peale palju ei jõua seda lund.
Kõik on puude otsas.
Kõik on puude otsas ja pudiseb koos käbidega alla ja siis me küll niidame, püüame tublid sügiseti olla, niidame rajad juba puhtaks ära, mutimulla hunnikud kõik siledaks aga see iseenesest on kõik majandusmets, puhas majandusmets ja kõik tasin allaga raides, 1000 tihu peal. Nii et ülekasvanud mets metsamajanduslikus mõistes.
Sa ei ole kõige tüüpilisem, kuidas ma siis ütlen, Eesti maaomanik, võiks öelda, et tavaliselt on ikka need suured telliskivid ja ära tule eramaa sildid ees, et miks sinu maadelt neid kuigi palju ei leia?
Jah, tegelikult üldse ei leia. Ja ma arvan, et me oma kodu me võiksime privaatsena enam vähem hoida, aga mets on ikkagi selline, võiks olla kõigil avatud. Ma olen jah seda meelt, ja võib-olla see annab ka mingisuguse signaali inimestele, kes vähe metsas käivad, et las nad olla sinna teretulnud ja nad on oodatud igal juhul sinna.
Okay, do you hear me? So we can continue. As he said in the end, he's not a typical Estonian forest owner. He's absolutely not typical, but he's the best. And that we understood that he's really the best, at minimum this year. But to explain who is the best or how we measure it. First of all, I show you some pies. How really Estonian forest ownership is divided by owners, especially by size of the forest. So here is divided in a couple of different parts. We are talking here about legal persons, not private persons. And here you see that despite the forest owner is using a form of legal person to manage the forest, the biggest is still up to 5 hectares. And the second is up to half hectares, and then up to 10 hectares. So what does it show? It shows that forest land is divided very, very small parts. And if we look this detailed, it's talking about private persons, not companies. And here we see that nearly a quarter of Estonian forest ownership by size belongs from 2 to 5 hectares. It means an average forest ownership is quite small. And we see the second place is even smaller. And if we found up to 100 hectares, it's only 1%, and more, even less. So like in a lot of European countries, Estonian average forest ownership is quite small. So it's the first graph which shows how is Estonian forest owner look like. If we are talking about sex, about forest owners, here we can talk only about private owners, of course, not companies. We see that we have nearly 2 times more men owning forest. The upper 3 are men, and upper 3 and down 3 are female forest owners. And here you see area of forest land from 0.1 up to more than 500 hectares. And it's a class of forest. And here is, sorry. Sorry, I should have to repeat. So you see the graph, yes? Here you see that nearly 1/3 of forest land belongs to female owners and nearly 2/3 of Estonian land belongs to male forest owners. Quite interesting statistics. I even didn't know it before today. Okay, but if we are talking about age of average forest owner, here on this graph we see that here is written number of forest owners, and here is forest ownership size group. We see from 0.1 up to more than 500 hectares. And here we see again the top of this graph is on 2.5 from 2 up to 5 hectares. And here we see quite equally is divided the forest ownership between people. The biggest proportion is from 40 to 50, then from 50 to 60, but even more or less the same proportion is from 60 to 70, which means forest owners in the age group from 40 to 80, it takes not all of the forest ownership, but very, very big percentage. And it means we have a little problem in this case. Young people are not forest owners a lot, or if they are owners, they don't have a lot of forest. The same graph, just turned around. And here on the basis, we see the group of age up to 10, up to 100 years. It's typical population pyramid, like we see everywhere. And here we see the hectares of forest land. And here again, the biggest part is somewhere between 10 and 20 and so on. Estonia contains of 15 counties. Quite small country, but the population of counties are not divided equally. Capital city belongs to Harju County. It means 1/3 of all Estonian population are living there. And the second is Tartu County, where a bit more than nearly 1/10% of Estonian population. And it explains how forest ownership is divided by different places. Despite Harju County by territory is an average county, much less than 10%, it takes, as you see, nearly 1/3 of all Estonian forest owners. What does it mean? It means that an average forest owner doesn't live near here forest. Yes, they live, 2/3 live, but here is one very, very big exception. And it is capital city, and it's typical process everywhere that people are concentrated in capital city and leave their forest ownership quite far away on the countryside. And here you see in capital, we have nearly half female and male forest owners. But as more we go far countryside, we see that female forest owners are much less than male forest owners. Just the more far from capital, the more closer to the forest, the more we have male forest owners and the less we have female forest owners. So, and as we promised, I will talk about one survey, which is called Survey of Private Forest Owners 2019, and it means we provided it 2 years ago, and it's one of the best surveys we have created in Estonia about forest ownership. And I will just tell you about some aspects about the results. First of all, client, it's our institution, Estonian Private Forest Center. It was funded by Minister of Environment. It was special funding what we could use only for this survey. The executor of this survey was Tallinn University, but they used Turu-uuringud company, which is a specialized company to provide the market research and interviewing people. So they were professional in providing such surveys. And the main goal of the study, why it was financed by ministry, is to provide input for the development of the forestry development plan up to 2030, including the creation of profile, the average private forest owner, as we only expected who it could be or can be, but we didn't have proved data, and to find out his or her attitudes and intention. So who is he or she, and what she's thinking, and what he or she wants. And the study was ready up to 30th of September 19. It means exactly 2 years ago. It means not very old, not significant changes during the last 2 years. And the main results of the study, first of all, of course, was to create the profile of private forest owners. Then maybe one of the interesting parts are activities and intentions in forest management, very useful. What they are doing in forest, how they get money from forest to use the forest-related sources of income. To understand forest owners' values in forest management and willingness to contribute into nature conservation. As I showed last week, nature conservation is a quite hot topic and has a lot of different access points. So this survey gave us at minimum widespread understanding what forest owner thinks. And for us as an institution who is operating in forestry, was probably the most interesting to understand awareness and attitude of forest owners, advocacy organizations, and forest cooperatives and associations. So our main question was, dear forest owner, who is protecting your interest in forestry? And of course, yes, you're right. Most of them don't know. And finally, we wanted to get assessment and expectations for state activities, how to promote private forestry. So what should the state do? Of course, this was not a survey to get directly policy recommendation, just understanding what people are thinking who own forest. Couple of slides about methodology. First of all, the target group was Estonian private forest owners. We have at the moment by this data 78,000 forest owners. We've managed forest land. We didn't take into account forest owners who don't have forest land. And 94% from were natural persons or physical persons, how to call, and 6% were legal persons or companies. And the sample of the survey was formed, of course, by random sampling, and we took the information from the forest register. And the sample was taken randomly 10,000 physical persons and 567 companies, just to create a sample and then start to take from this sample. And data collection took place from the May to June, and we used a combined method of web-based questionnaire and telephone survey. So people, the goal was to get answers from the person. Doesn't matter which way, but we need to get the answers. I have to say, it wasn't, of course, officially said, but to get the permission from our National Data Protection Agency to use this data of 10,000 physical persons was extremely complicated. It took much more time than to provide the survey, because to create a survey using people's data in strict accordance to GDPR, it means if you have already permission to data, everything else is very, very simple. It was the biggest problem, and it took a lot of nervous cells. So what else? We chose exactly 1,000. It was minimum number we wanted to get to be scientifically proved and statistical representative data. We got a bit more, 1,008 respondents' answers, and 85% filled it online, and 15% we had to do contact by telephone. And maximum sampling error at 95, its regular confidence level is 3.1%. And of course, some groups are smaller than the sampling error, may be higher, but we stay and officially state this number, which is not very small, but not big. And after the completion of the survey, the data was weighted by the background information about the legal status of the sample persons. Is it natural? Is it legal? And the area of forest land ownership. But what we didn't do, we didn't contain register-based background information of the people about their membership in forest associations. And this data was not weighted in these characteristics, because official data, what we have in our institution, nearly 17% of forest owners belong to forest associations. The latest number is nearly 15,000. And if we have nearly 80,000 forest owners, you can find this percentage. Okay, 2 years ago, it was a bit smaller. But in this sample, it just happened to be a bit more, 21–20%, depends on was it unweighted or weighted sample. But this difference we found being not so big that we had to keep in mind that make some special weighting. So we just took it into account that we know that we have nearly 4 or 5% more respondents belonging to forest owners associations. So here's the answer to the question. We asked who is an average forest owner, and the answer is the average forest owner is 56-year-old Estonian male forest owner. He has a second-level education. It's high school or secondary school education or professional education. He works and lives in a rural settlement in the immediate vicinity of his forest land. As I showed a couple of slides ago. There is one very big exception, which is in capital city, but 2/3 nearly forest owners live near his forest land. And he or she doesn't belong to forest association. And of course, the number we already repeated a couple of times, the majority of Estonian private forest owners are forest owners who own less than 20 hectares of forest. Up 2 to 5 is the biggest, but we can very clearly say that average forest owner owns less than 20. So this average person, and here's some just graphs. In register data, it means forest register data. And if we compare in answers in questionnaire, we see some differences. Less than 1 hectare in forest register are 17%. In our questionnaire, only 9%. But you see the differences between registers and answers is not so big that it takes more or less an average forestry people. So, but here is a key question to talk about why I started to say that the guy who we saw in the movie is not an average forest owner. And the key issue why a lot of forest owners are not very keen to manage their forest land is that the most common way to acquire a forest owner or a forest by owners is by inheritance. Nearly half just got them. In the comparison, legal forest owners have purchased the forest 93%. And in this case, the forest owners who manage their forest as self-employed, it means he's a physical person but employs himself. The clearly dominant option was privatization, purchase, and inheritance. I have a slide just to show it. Here we see the people who bought the land, private persons only 29%, but legal persons 93%. And here are other ways, restitutions and so on. It means to have just to get a forest land, they are much less managing their forest than people who had to buy it. And that's the answer why legal persons are managing their forest much more. And here is how it's divided in all our forest land. Private persons 86%, self-employed manage 6%, and legal persons 8%. But now one not very common slide. We found if we describe the forest owner, we asked about their education. And this red is about basic or first level education. This hell brown is secondary education or second level education. And this the whitest is the third level of high education. And here we see all respondents, nearly half were on second level education. But if we compare legal persons or companies, we see that respondents, only 1/3 had secondary education and 2/2 had higher or university education, and no basic educated people in companies. But if we see the private owners, we see 7% have only basic education, which is quite logical if we think a couple of slides ago that we have a lot of forest owners who are older than 60, 70, or even 80 years. And it means their education shouldn't be very good as they have grown up during the war. So how they got their forestry knowledge? If we compare the biggest part, which is information material, including media, it's the upper. And here we see all respondents have nearly 38%, private persons 39, 40 like self-employed, and companies 32. So what does it show? It shows that people get a lot of their knowledge from media, and it doesn't depend a lot how they are managing their forest. But if we are taking forestry education, what they got from vocational school or university, then companies have nearly 40%, but physical persons only less than 20. And of course, without any special knowledge, it was the strangest answer that nearly 25% of legal persons said they don't have any forestry knowledge. It's strange, and we have to believe that it's so. So we have told a lot about the management of own forest and percentage, how and what's the percentage of people are doing. So only 55% of forest owners have done regular management processes. I mean, planting, maintenance, felling, or whatever doing in his or her forest. But of course, in legal persons' forest, they have done much bigger percentage. And what's strange, nearly half haven't done anything, but 85% are planning to do something during the next 10 years. So it means there is some contradiction between those numbers, but we don't even know what number we have to believe or not. But, and of course, 70% of forest owners have used the sources of income. I have a special slide about it. And but again, 26% of forest owners, each fourth, has applied to forestry-related subsidies, and 3% less have received it. And here is a proportion of forest owners who perform different works. And here we see the highest percentage, nearly 70. It's different types of fellings, and top 3 is includes different renewals. But if we are talking the less, nearly 4%, it belongs to picking mushrooms or selling services for hunting or something like that. So it means to sell ecosystem services market is, how to say, not very developed. It's not developed in Estonia yet. At the moment, most they get their income from different types of fellings, and that's it. It means forest management for an average forest owner. And here is a slide which describes number of forest owners members. And here, unfortunately, is not written down. We couldn't take it, but here different forest owners associations, which includes companies and physical persons. We have top 3, and then the number goes slower and slower. This is number of forest owners. The biggest has more than 1,000. Of course, now have 2 years passed. It means probably the top 3 is over 1,000. But more interesting is to talk about forest owners associations by territory. And here we see a huge exception, again, in the top right. And here we see that one forest owners association is much, much more bigger than all others. And the reason is that they include a lot of forest owner companies. They have a lot of legal persons, despite the number of legal persons is not so big. You see only less than 10%. Why I showed this slide, because we were asking in this survey why the forest owner belong to forest owners associations or not, and why only 21% belongs to association, and why 67 don't have an idea to join a forest association. And the reason is that they don't see practical use. It's here. They don't see any profit or whatever positive just to belong to forest owners association. Nearly a quarter just haven't heard about it. And here is a quite small percentage, less than 10, who doesn't trust forest owners associations. And normally the forest owners associations are associated with forest work, and they have no idea that they can be part of the organizations who protects forest owners' interest. So what the result, briefly, in Estonia, people see Forest Owners Association as an organization which provides work in forest. And that's it. All other functions are not important. And talking about income, which is related to forest ownership, and here we see 2 big parts. First is picking anything and wood for heating, just for himself, more than half. And a bit less than half have income source just selling the wood. And 30% haven't used any income ways to get income from his or her forest. And here is very like tourism events, only less than 1%. So it's very, very small parts of tourist income get forest owners. So mainly they use it for selling the wood and using the wood for himself. And what are the objectives? What they take very important is quite strange, is to protect people. They take it very important from pollution of air. They say that very important is to protect the landscape or water, to protect different objects in the nature. And very important is taken only less than 20% of forest owners to get wood from the forest. So here you see a quite big contradiction. The main income source is to get wood, to sell it or use it himself. But very important is rated getting wood only less than 50. So it's again show that activities in forest and important objectives for the forest owner are very different. And here one slide to talk about what's the result of the public debate on forestry. And the main result, what forest owners say that after these long discussions, is to manage the forest more eco-friendly or nature-friendly. And only 12% of forest owners say that after the public debate, they started more to selling the forest. But even 12%, it means that a lot of people know that they have a forest and they can use it really, despite the different disputes about it. And the most painful question in Estonian forestry at the moment is the willingness to keep logs voluntarily during bird nesting, to stop any activities. Okay, we haven't at the moment very strictly defined what we can do during bird nesting or we can't, but the survey shows that forest owners mostly say that yes, they agree to stop any forestry work during bird nesting. It can have a lot of side effects, but it's a result of our survey and shows what people really think. It doesn't matter they act for this, but they think so. So let's take the together. Let's start to finish. Main problems. What do we got from this survey? First of all, unreasonable forest management. It means we need two things. We need more state control, but we need voluntary logging. And there are a lot of ignorant opinions, especially from extremists. And media noise, and the result is a negative image of the forest industry. And what we need more true information. And we need nature education, real education for the media. And of course, to listen to the scientists. Another three problems which are reflected from the survey. Unfair taxation of private forest owners. And our goal is to treat natural, it means natural or physical persons and legal persons equally. So forest owner is a forest owner, and we have to treat them equally on each side. Legislation is changing too fast. Of course, it's clear we need more stability. And yes, we have a quarter of forest land at the moment in Estonia under protection. We are satisfied with this number. It's a good caliber, but we have to keep in mind that the content of this protection, so what does this protection reflect and what kind of forest land is under protection? This is the key. This is important. And the final result is that it's important to clarify that the real status of Estonian forest is actually good. Thank you.
And thank you, Indrek, for this interesting presentation. I enjoyed it very much because we had very similar inquiry among forest owners here in Estonia, also in 2019. And we had the same problem with getting forest owners, how to reach them because of these strict privacy rules. So we were not able to get the data as you did, but we somehow then got them through telephone and so on. It was not easy, but we hired also a company who did that for us. And also the first part, if I can comment, the best manager, forest manager, something like that. We have also similar competition here for forest owners. We select every year the best private forest owners, and they get a special reward. So this is also kind of campaign. But otherwise, I can say that our forest owners are very similar in average by age and education. They're only a little bit, they have a little bit less forests. And I don't know if you ask them how they are planning to manage their forests in the future, because when we asked them, it was surprising for us that 8% said that they are not planning to harvest or manage their forests at all. And there was another 22%, I think around 22%, who said that they inherited forests, so and they don't have any plans for managing their forests. And it was also interesting to see how many forest owners harvest wood only for themselves. Nearly 70% said that they use wood only for themselves, so they're not entering the market. So somehow we got this picture what are private forest owners really, what they're looking for in their forest. So mainly covering their own needs. But I think that there are also other questions, so I will leave it with that. Thank you.
Yes, I can comment only that this survey results were a bit contradictional because they reflect a lot of on one hand, the willingness and thoughts about forest owners, and on another hand, what they are really doing. And there is a contradiction between those two things. It's normal because they are people. So we have two questions. May we start from Joseph?
Yes. Hello, Indrek.
Hello.
Well, one question is, how do you think the respondents' profile is representative of the average owner profile?
Yes, for sure, because as I said, we took 1,000 and we took those 1,000 from a sample from 10,000, and it means for Estonian forest owners, which is 80,000. It's quite big percentage, and the mistake 3.1% is quite acceptable. So yes, to talk, is it statistically representative? I can very clearly say yes, it represents an average forest owner.
Yes, but in a way, the respondent maybe is the more mentalized forest owner.
No, because we didn't give them a choice. It means it wasn't, we didn't ask 10,000 and do you want to answer or not? We tried who was selected then to get really the answer from this person. So yes, I understand it can be a source from little mistake, but I don't take it as a very big mistake.
Another question is, this protected area is mainly on private forest or public forest?
Mostly public, state forest, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Erik?
Okay, thank you, Indrek. Can you show us one of the first slides you had in your presentation regarding number of female and male forest owners?
Yes, just a second. It
was a curve.
Ah, you mean this?
Showing how the number of forest owners has been developed.
You mean this one?
Oh, before that one.
Before that was no, it was this one.
Maybe.
Okay. Here it shows that here we have different data from 2010, 15, and 19 on these graphs only. It makes it a bit maybe messy, but we see the message is very clear that as this is here the average percent, the average forest owner class, it means nearly 20 hectares. They are more, men have a bit more forest than female. But what was the question here?
It's a question, is the number of forest owners growing? Can I read it like that?
Nope. You can, yes, you see here the number of forest owners. No, it's not number of forest owners growing. You see that they have more forest land, but they are not. Maybe this is even better. Here you see, well, I don't know, but no, the number of forest owners is not growing, but an average forest land area is growing because people are selling their very small pieces, what they got from restitution, and a lot of couple of people are acquiring those parts and get more bigger forest ownerships.
My idea was that forest land is a limited resource, and how come that the number of forest owners are growing? But
no, the forest owners numbers is decreasing and the average land is slowly increasing.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Everybody's tired already. But if not, we can finish for today and see you tomorrow at 10 o'clock Estonian time and 9 o'clock Central European time. Yes? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for
Thank
today.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.